Ever feel like the world's laughing at you, but you know you're meant for more? That's Jimmy Kimmel, standing under St. Louis Gateway Arch on a sticky June night in 2025. The air's heavy, his heart's racing. Tonight, he's not just a late-night host. He's about to do something wild. Jimmy's show was still big, but the spark was gone. Jokes felt stale, applause empty. He wanted to matter. Then, a story hit him hard. In Washington, D.C., Donald Trump threw a $50 million tribute to the U.S. Army. Really a birthday bash for himself. Tanks, flyovers, fireworks over the Potomac, sponsored by UFC and Scott's Miracle Grow. The crowd? Thin. The vibe? A kid flaunting his Hot Wheels. Except this kid had power. Jimmy watched, furious. This wasn't just a bad show. Trump was using soldiers, the flag, as props for his ego. People shrugged, too tired to care. Jimmy couldn't. He canceled his show, grabbed a bag, and headed to St. Louis. Why? The city was alive with protests against Trump's parade and new immigration rules. The Gateway Arch, a symbol of hope, called him. Downtown was electric. Families, veterans, chanting. Signs like, "If Melania doesn't have to live with him, why do we?" Jimmy felt alive. Then an older woman, tears in her eyes, grabbed him. "My grandson's in the Army. That parade broke his heart. You're Jimmy Kimmel. Do something." Her words shook him. He wasn't just a comedian. He was a voice. Under the arch, he vowed to fight. Not with jokes, but with heart. This was bigger than him. What do you think? Ever had to stand up for something? Share in the comments. Jimmy's just getting started. Subscribe to see where this goes. Jimmy Kimmel stood in a dimly lit diner off Route 66 in Springfield, Illinois, a week after his St. Louis epiphany. The smell of burnt coffee and bacon grease hung in the air, and the jukebox played a scratchy Springsteen tune. He wasn't here for the food. He was here to meet someone who could help him turn his promise into action. His hands shook as he sipped his coffee, not from the caffeine, but from the weight of what he was about to do. That grandmother's words in St. Louis hadn't left him. "Do something, Jimmy." They echoed every night, keeping him awake in his hotel room, staring at the ceiling. He'd spent days talking to protesters, veterans, even a few soldiers who'd been at Trump's D.C. parade. They all felt the same, betrayed. Trump's spectacle had turned their service into a prop, and nobody was holding him accountable. Jimmy knew he couldn't just go back to Hollywood and crack jokes. He needed a plan, something big enough to wake America up. That's when he heard about Sarah, a retired Army sergeant who'd become a community organizer in Springfield. She'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan, lost friends in combat, and now ran a veterans support group. Word was, she had a knack for rallying people, exactly what Jimmy needed. He tracked her down through a mutual friend and set up this meeting, hoping she'd hear him out. Sarah walked in, her boots clicking on the linoleum. She was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense vibe. "You're that TV guy," she said, sliding into the booth. "Why's a comedian sitting in my diner, looking like he's about to rob a bank?" Jimmy leaned forward, his voice low. "I'm done with jokes. I saw what Trump did in D.C. That parade, using soldiers like pawns. I met a woman whose grandson's in the Army. He's crushed. I want to fight this, but I need help. I think you're the one who can make it real." Sarah raised an eyebrow, sizing him up. "You're serious? This ain't a publicity stunt?" "Swear on my kids," Jimmy said, his voice cracking. "I'm in this." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "All right, Kimmel. Trump's parade was a slap in the face to every soldier I know. But you can't just march in here with a microphone and fix it. You need a movement. Something that hits people in the gut." That's when the idea sparked. Sarah suggested a nationwide campaign, honor over ego. It'd be a series of rallies, starting in small towns like Springfield, building to a massive event in D.C. The goal? Show America what real patriotism looks like. Not tanks and fireworks, but stories of soldiers, families, and communities who'd been disrespected by Trump's stunt. Jimmy would use his platform to amplify their voices, not his own. They spent hours hashing it out. Sarah knew organizers in Ohio, Texas, and Pennsylvania who could pull crowds. Jimmy offered to fund the first rally out of his own pocket and get his team to spread the word online. By the time they left the diner, the sun was rising over the prairie, and Jimmy felt a fire he hadn't felt in years. But doubt crept in as he drove back to his hotel. Could he really pull this off? He wasn't a leader. He was a guy who told fart jokes for a living. What if he let these people down? Have you ever taken a leap that scared you senseless? What kept you going? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious. Jimmy's fight is just heating up. Hit that subscribe button to stay with us. Jimmy Kimmel stood on the makeshift stage in a high school football field in Youngstown, Ohio, under a gray September sky in 2025. The air smelled of wet grass and popcorn from a nearby concession stand. A crowd of 1,000, factory workers, veterans, grandparents, stared up at him, their faces a mix of hope and skepticism. Jimmy's stomach churned. This was it. The first honor over ego rally. One wrong word, and he'd lose them. It had been 2 months since his diner meeting with Sarah in Springfield. They'd worked non-stop, pulling together organizers, booking venues, and spreading the word through Jimmy's show and social media. Youngstown, a steel town hit hard by job losses, was the perfect place to start. Its people knew what it felt like to be forgotten, just like the soldiers disrespected by Trump's DC parade. But standing here now, with a microphone in hand, Jimmy felt like an imposter. What right did a Hollywood guy have to speak for them? Sarah, standing backstage, gave him a nod. "Tell their story, not yours," she'd said. Jimmy took a deep breath and started. "I'm not here to make you laugh. I'm here because of a grandmother I met in St. Louis. Her grandson's in the Army, and Trump's $50 million ego trip in DC made him feel like his service was a joke. I'm here because that's not right." The crowd murmured, leaning in. Jimmy told stories he'd heard on the road. A Marine who'd lost a leg in Iraq, now struggling to pay for his kid's school. A widow whose husband's memory was cheapened by Trump's tanks rolling for applause. He didn't mention Trump's name again, just the pain his actions caused. The crowd's skepticism melted. Some nodded, others wiped tears. Then, a veteran named Mike, burly with a gray beard, took the mic. "I served 20 years, he said, voice shaking. "That parade? It wasn't for us. It was for him." The crowd roared, clapping, stomping. Jimmy felt a lump in his throat. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about them. By the end, the field was electric. People hugged, shared stories, signed up to help. Sarah grabbed Jimmy's arm. "You did it, Kimmel. This is just the start." But as Jimmy smiled, a text buzzed his phone. It was from a producer friend in LA. "Trump's team is watching. They're not happy. Be careful." Jimmy's heart sank. He'd known this wouldn't be easy, but now it felt real. Trump's people could crush this before it grew. Could he keep this going? Have you ever spoken up, knowing it might cost you? What was it like? Share in the comments. The movement's growing. Subscribe to see what's next. Jimmy Kimmel sat in a cramped motel room in San Antonio, Texas, late October 2025, the glow of his laptop casting shadows on the peeling wallpaper. The Honor Over Ego campaign was exploding. Rallies in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and now Texas drew thousands, their stories of betrayed soldiers and forgotten towns flooding social media. Jimmy's heart swelled reading comments online. Finally, someone's listening, but his hands trembled as he scrolled through a new message. An anonymous email warning, "Back off, Kimmel, or you'll regret it." The Youngstown rally had lit a spark, and Sarah's network of organizers fanned it into a blaze. San Antonio's rally, set for tomorrow at the Alamo, was their biggest yet. Veterans groups, local churches, even a few country singers signed on, drawn by Jimmy's raw honesty on stage. He'd stopped trying to be funny, instead sharing stories like Mike's from Ohio or a young widow's in Pittsburgh whose husband's Purple Heart felt mocked by Trump's parade. Each rally ended with crowds chanting, "Honor over ego," and Jimmy felt like he was part of something real. But the warning email wasn't the only sign of trouble. Sarah had heard whispers of Trump's team pressuring sponsors to pull out. A local news station in San Antonio, owned by a Trump-friendly conglomerate, was already calling the rally divisive. Jimmy's producer friend in LA texted again, "They're digging into your taxes, your show's contracts. They want dirt." Jimmy's stomach knotted. He'd put his career, maybe his family's safety on the line. Was this worth it? He called Sarah, who was prepping volunteers downtown. "They're coming for us," he said, voice low. "What if we're poking a bear we can't handle?" Sarah didn't flinch. "Jimmy, you saw those people in Youngstown. They're not backing down, and neither are we. Tomorrow, you tell the truth at the Alamo. That's our weapon." Her words steadied him, but sleep didn't come that night. The next day, under the Alamo's stone walls, 5,000 people gathered. Jimmy took the stage, the Texas sun burning his neck. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about soldiers like Maria, who came home from Afghanistan to a VA that failed her. It's about all of us demanding respect over ego." The crowd roared, but Jimmy's eyes caught a group of men in the back, suits, earpieces, watching too closely. As the rally ended, a teenage girl handed him a folded flag from her dad, killed in Iraq. "Thank you," she whispered, tears falling. Jimmy clutched the flag, his resolve hardening. He wouldn't quit. Not now. Ever face a moment where fear almost stopped you, but you pushed through? What happened? Share in the comments. The fight's getting hotter. Subscribe to keep up. Jimmy Kimmel paced a dusty community center in Tulsa, Oklahoma, November 2025, the hum of a space heater barely cutting the chill. The Honor Over Ego campaign was a wildfire now. Rallies in Texas, Ohio, and beyond had drawn tens of thousands, their chants echoing from small towns to national news. But tonight, Jimmy's chest was tight, not with pride, but with dread. A trusted ally had just stabbed him in the back. The San Antonio rally at the Alamo had been a triumph, with 5,000 voices roaring for respect over ego. The folded flag from that teenage girl still sat on Jimmy's nightstand, a reminder of why he couldn't quit. But success came with a shadow. Trump's team wasn't just watching anymore, they were hitting back. The anonymous threats had turned personal, targeting Jimmy's family, his show's sponsors. He'd brushed it off, fueled by Sarah's grit and the crowd's passion. Until now. This morning, Jimmy got a call from Sarah. Her voice was sharp, urgent. "Check the news. It's Tom." Tom was their media guy, a former journalist who joined in Ohio handling press for the rallies. Jimmy trusted him, shared plans with him. But there it was, splashed across a Trump-friendly outlet. Kimmel's Patriot rallies a Hollywood scam, insider reveals. Tom had leaked emails, twisted Jimmy's words, claiming the campaign was a publicity stunt to boost his show's ratings. The article even dragged Sarah, painting her as a disgruntled vet exploiting soldiers' pain. Jimmy's blood boiled. He called Tom, but the line was dead. Sarah stormed into the community center, her face like stone. "He sold us out," she said. "Word is, Trump's people offered him a payout. He took it and ran." Jimmy sank into a chair, the weight of betrayal crushing him. The rallies were real. Every tear, every story. How could anyone think this was a game? The Tulsa rally was tomorrow, their first since the Alamo. Sarah had lined up local veterans and a Gold Star family to speak, but now the news was poisoning everything. Online, trolls were tearing into Jimmy. "Hollywood elite faking tears?" Some supporters wavered, unsure what to believe. Jimmy stared at the floor, doubt creeping in. Had he been naive? Was he in over his head? Sarah grabbed his shoulder. "We've got one shot to fix this. Tomorrow, you get on that stage and show them who you are. No script, no jokes, just you." Jimmy nodded, but his throat was tight. The flag on his nightstand flashed in his mind. He had to keep going. For that girl, for Sarah, for everyone who believed. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? How did you push forward? Share in the comments. The storm's hitting hard. Subscribe to see if Jimmy can fight through. Jimmy Kimmel stood on a creaky stage in a Tulsa, Oklahoma fairground, November 2025, under a sky bruised with storm clouds. The air was thick with the scent of hay and rain, and 7,000 people, veterans, farmers, families, filled the field, their eyes locked on him. Yesterday's betrayal by Tom, the media guy who sold them out to Trump's team, had nearly broken Jimmy. The headlines still stung. Kimmel's fake patriot scam. But tonight, with Sarah's words, "Show them who you are," burning in his chest, he was ready to fight back. The Tulsa rally was make or break. Doubts lingered after Tom's leak, and Trump-friendly media was circling, ready to pounce. Jimmy had barely slept, haunted by the fear of letting down the people who'd trusted him. Like the teenage girl from San Antonio, whose father's flag still sat on his nightstand. Sarah had spent the day rallying volunteers, and now she stood backstage, her nod giving Jimmy the push he needed. He gripped the mic, his voice steady despite the knot in his throat. "I know what they're saying about me, that this is a Hollywood stunt, but I'm here for the same reason you are. For soldiers like my friend's grandson in St. Louis, who felt his service was mocked by a $50 million ego parade in D.C. This isn't about me, it's about us." The crowd leaned in, quiet but intense. Jimmy introduced Carla, a Gold Star mother whose son died in Syria. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "My boy gave everything. That D.C. parade turned his sacrifice into a photo op." Tears rolled down her cheeks, and the crowd's silence broke. Sobs, claps, shouts of honor over ego. Jimmy felt it too, his eyes burning. He shared more stories. A Tulsa vet denied VA care, a family whose Marine felt forgotten. Each word was raw, real, no jokes. The energy shifted. The crowd chanted, louder than ever, drowning out the distant thunder. A man in a cowboy hat yelled, "We're with you, Jimmy!" For the first time, Jimmy felt like he wasn't just leading, he was one of them. Sarah grabbed his arm after, eyes shining. "You turned it around, Kimmel. They believe again." But as the crowd dispersed, Jimmy's phone buzzed. Another text from his LA producer. "Trump's planning a counter-rally in D.C. bigger than his parade. He's coming for you." Jimmy's heart sank. The fight was far from over, and now it was personal. Have you ever had to prove yourself when the world doubted you? What kept you strong? Share in the comments. Jimmy's facing his biggest test yet. Subscribe to see how it ends. Jimmy Kimmel stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., December 2025, the winter wind cutting through his coat. Before him stretched a sea of 50,000, veterans, families, everyday Americans, their breath visible in the cold, their signs reading, "Honor over ego." Across the city, Trump's counter-rally roared, a glitzy spectacle of tanks and fireworks meant to drown them out. But here, under Lincoln's gaze, Jimmy felt unbreakable. This was the moment he'd been building toward since that night in St. Louis. The Tulsa rally had turned the tide, silencing doubters after Tom's betrayal. Rallies in Oklahoma, Texas, and Ohio had grown the movement. But Trump's team fought back hard. Smear campaigns, sponsor pullouts, even threats to Jimmy's family. Yet every story, from Carla's in Tulsa to the San Antonio girl's flag, kept him going. Sarah, ever steady, had rallied organizers nationwide, and now they were here, facing Trump head-on. Jimmy took the mic, his voice echoing over the mall. 6 months ago, I was just a guy telling jokes. Then I met a grandmother in St. Louis whose grandson's heart was broken by a $50 million parade that mocked his service. I met Carla, who lost her son in Syria. I met you, people who know what honor really means. Today, we're not just protesting. We're showing America what patriotism looks like. The crowd erupted, chants of honor over ego shaking the ground. Sarah introduced speakers, a wounded Marine, a nurse who'd served in Iraq, each story a dagger to Trump's ego-driven spectacle. Jimmy stepped back, letting their voices shine. He wasn't the hero, they were. But when a young boy, clutching his dad's dog tags, ran up and hugged him, Jimmy's eyes filled. This was why he'd risked everything. Trump's rally, broadcast on giant screens nearby, fizzled. Sparse crowds, bored soldiers, and a rambling speech couldn't compete. Social media exploded with hashtag honor over ego, and news outlets, even skeptical ones, called Jimmy's event a defining moment. As the sun set, the crowd sang Sweet Caroline, a nod to Jimmy's roots, and he felt it. They'd won. Sarah grabbed his hand. You did it, Kimmel. You gave them a voice. Jimmy looked out, the flag from San Antonio still in his heart. He wasn't done fighting, but tonight, he was a hero. What's a moment that changed how you saw yourself? Share in the comments. This story's just the start. Subscribe for more.